that he really has to come. You know what? I'm just gonna check it out. I'll be there in a sec. So, the first speaker was trained by Kissinger to be harsh and ruthless. And Kissinger's strategy was probably not too, successful in Vietnam and stuff. But maybe this time it's going to work out for North Korea. I really hope so. He's called General Giles by his colleagues. So here we have the Prime Minister of Government, Giles Scott Smith. Thank you. Now there's this guy, flying in straight from the jungle of Papua New Guinea. It's a savage, basically. And he's carrying the white man's burden to a supermassive black hole. Here we have the leader of the opposition, Willem van den Berg. Thank you very much. So, this is the man who threatens students to cut them down on their grades if they win the debate. He'd rather be leading Europe's armies against savages like this one. And he's the self-appointed Minister of Defense, who rather attacks than defends. Give it up for the Deputy Prime Minister, Tobias van Gent! Thank you again. Now this guy claims to be born in the USA. He wasn't, he's just as Dutch as this guy over here, who's from Papua New Guinea. And he wanted me to read out a text from the Bible to you, from Isaiah 34, the 9th verse.
Shame.
Okay, the verse is as follows. When he speaks, the earth will crumble. When he moves, the universe will fall. Oh, God. Give it up for the deputy leader of opposition, Jair van der Stelt.
Your own personal Jesus.
Thank you for your enthusiasm. It's really getting there. Okay, so this person is often called a Duracell rabbit. That's way too much energy, way too much. So she's just going to be here, standing, and giving away energy. Give it up for the new dean, member of government, Barbara Oomen! So this guy isn't really known and out there yet. But actually, he's the winner of the Buddy Tournament in Amsterdam of 2011. He's a rising star, and soon he will be the 51st star of the American flag. Give it up for the member of opposition, Remco Zwetsloot! Okay, this man is a true English gentleman. For the occasion, he left his hat and glove at home. But still, he's a brilliant speaker, with his true British charm. So give it up for the government whip, Michael Burke! Okay, so this guy thinks that Oxford debaters start to cry when they're debating him. This guy thinks he's won so many tournaments in his life that I shouldn't even tell them all to you, because after like 10 minutes you might get bored. Give it up for the whip of the opposition, Bas Tonissen! So now the debate is finally gonna happen, guys. I left you waiting for a bit. I hope it was worth it. So here is the word on the motion that's behind my back. This house would militarily intervene in North Korea. The word is to the Prime Minister, Mr. Scott Smith. Please.
Good evening. Jane! Mr. Chair, thank you very much. Keep going, it's good. Honourable delegates, freedom-loving citizens of the world. Frankly, this debate is over before it's even started. However, I will do my best to enter into the spirit of the occasion by outlining the crimes of the accused, the so-called Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Or, as our good American cousins say, DECO. First, to clarify 2 points. The motion here concerns military intervention, the fine details of which I will leave to my rather bellicose and obdurate colleague, Dr. Van Gent, who, as you can see, is already frothing at the mouth. Point 2. The target here concerns the regime in DECO, not the entire population of DECO. Although I cannot rule out that my rather bellicose colleague, Dr. Van Gent, will advocate large-scale massive indiscriminate carpet bombing in the cause of freedom. As my good friend Dr. Kissinger highly recommended to me only recently. Less of that. Right. I will now outline the three principal issues at stake here today, tonight. Point 1. International peace and security. Now, we represent the United Nations Security Council, and as far as we are concerned, and we are unanimous on this point, the DICO regime has a long track record of being a major threat to its neighbours. I need only mention the date of 1950. I know it's a long time ago, but still, 1950, completely unprovoked invasion from the north to the south. The only reason this has not been repeated since then is thanks to the large-scale, highly peaceful US military presence in that region of the globe, containing the mad Marxist munching morons in Pyongyang. Thank you. The DICO regime possesses a long-range missile capability, which they have shown on several occasions. In fact, I might add, it has become something of a national pastime to occasionally lob a projectile over Japan into the Northern Pacific, an event shown live on DICO TV, often to the strains of that well-known hit, Run Imperialist, Run. In a second. Point 2, diplomacy. The DICO regime is the epitome of that well-meaning phrase, the irrational actor, otherwise known as states of concern or goddamn pains in the ass. Or what our friends in the Pentagon like to refer to as target practice. Yes.
Sir. Can you hear me? Yes. Does the word nuke mean anything to you, and what are you going to do about it?
I'm coming to that. Right, where was it? The regime has a long track record of breaking agreements, lying, cheating, avoiding all the norms of international diplomacy. These are simply people you cannot deal with. It is impossible. They don't understand what it means to put your signature to the bottom of a piece of paper. Most notably, they have been hopeless in the development and proliferation of nuclear weapons, which my good colleague just happily mentioned there. To clarify, in 2003, the DICO regime was the first signatory nation ever, I might add, ladies and gentlemen, to withdraw from the Non-Proliferation Treaty. These guys make the Iranians look like saints. You know, the Iranians are goddamn amateurs up to these guys. On a risk scale of 1 to 10, the North Koreans, for those of you with good popular cultural knowledge, go up to 11. Point 3, human security. It goes without saying that the DICO regime has treated its own people as mere cannon fodder on the long march to post-capitalist paradise. Although they all look a pretty sad bunch, we're prepared to give those people a chance. And if they bugger it up, we'll just have to bomb them again. I leave the fine points of the blatantly obvious cause of human rights in this case to the holder of the Mother Teresa Chair for All Things Peaceful and Lovable at the Utrecht University, Professor Dr. Barbara Oomen. To conclude, the DICO regime has forfeited its rights to exist on every single level. It is living on borrowed time. It has been living on borrowed time since 1954. It is an anachronism, a time warp of the days when Stalin and Mao walked the earth. That dinosaur era is over. In every civilized sense, this state is no more. It has ceased to be. We should recall that President Clinton almost ordered military action against this decrepit anachronism in 1994, but was unfortunately distracted by private business in the Oval Office. We should recall that had the neocons not fucked up in Iraq in 2003, North Korea would now be history. I say 3 strikes, you are out. Let bombing commence. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. The microphone was just a little too high. So, now, please, leader of the opposition, come up to the front. Give it up for Willem van den Berg.
Today in Korea, it's the late Kim Jong-il's 70th birthday. Now this is a man who scored 14 holes in one the first time he ever played golf. It's going to be one hell of a party. Giles, you are a party pooper. I just have to say that. Now, for a few points of rebuttal before I show you why this plan is completely abysmal. So the first point of rebuttal. You say that North Korea has treated their people as cannon fodder. Well, my point of rebuttal to that is, what is Van Gent going to do then? Secondly, you mentioned that he was a very bellicose man, so I'm going to take your word for it. Secondly, you said that you represent the United Nations Security Council. Well, this is kind of absurd because in one word rebuttal, veto. No way is this ever going to happen. Russia, and especially China, will never allow this to happen, an invasion of a country that is neighboring to China. Yes?
Don't you consider a big difference between bombing for freedom and bombing for communist anachronism?
I'm sure there is a big difference between the two of them, but the fact is that China and North Korea are trading partners at the moment, and that China is trying to go against what the US is on a global scale. Just look at the intervention that was trying to be passed for Syria. Both China and Russia vetoed it. Intervention in Sudan, China vetoed it. No way is this ever going to happen. But, assuming that your absurd plan was possible, there are still 3 points I want to make. Firstly, massive nuclear, chemical, and biological destruction. Secondly, no improvements for the lives of the average Koreans. And thirdly, the world would become a more dangerous place. So let me start with my first argument. North Korea possesses nuclear weapons. This has been proven. They've had nuclear tests in 2006 and 2009. No country with nuclear weapons has ever been invaded before. This would be a precedent. They also have the missile capabilities of hitting Russia, India, China, Japan, South Korea, other countries as well. Can you imagine the destruction if even one nuclear bomb falls on, for instance, Tokyo or Beijing or Shanghai? This would bring destruction on an unparalleled scale. Please sit down, sir. Also, North Korea is the most militarized state in the world. They have the 4th largest standing army with over 1 million men. They have the largest special forces in the world. They have the 3rd largest stockpile of chemical and biological weapons. So we're assuming that a UN-led invasion or an American-led invasion, which is much, much more likely, would still be able to beat the Koreans. But imagine the guerrilla war that would ensue. The amount of insurgency. This is a country that would be geared towards creating a hell for whoever invaded. And if you thought that what Americans face in Iraq or Afghanistan was bad, please think again. Yes, Professor Burke.
I don't think soldiers who are starving to death are going to really put up much resilience.
I think a soldier who is starving to death but has biological weapons is fully capable of being able to press a trigger that will be able to do a lot of damage. So that argument does not stand. My second point is that the life of the average Korean would not, the average North Korean would not improve. And there are 2 reasons for this. Firstly, because they would go from living in a prison country, which we admit is bad. We do think that the current North Korean situation is bad. We sympathize for the North Korean citizens. But we think that with an intervention it would become much worse, because they would go from living in a prison country to living in a war zone where nuclear weapons have been set off, where chemical and biological weapons have been used. Kim Jong-un is a new leader. He is out to prove himself. If there is an invasion against him, he would be more than likely, more than willing to nuke his own capital. He would be willing to nuke Pyongyang and then blame it on the Americans or whoever else did the invasion. So these people would go and live from a prison area, which yes is bad, to a war zone, which is even worse. Furthermore, they have also been brainwashed into thinking that Kim Jong-un is the greatest man alive. So these people are not able to think straightly about events. So even if their lives were to increase objectively from our standards, they wouldn't think so, because they also have a racial superiority complex which is being brainwashed into them. They've been fed a steady diet of propaganda and lies. So anything that happens that is good for them, they will praise on their own leader. Anything that happens that is bad, they will blame us. Imagine if Kim Jong-un does nuke Pyongyang, his own capital. They will be blaming us and our intervention, and not him, not the person that actually did it. There are countless historical examples of this. Think of the US invading Afghanistan and Iraq. Are the people there happy for how they have been liberated? No, absolutely not. North Korea would be much, much worse, because the destruction there would be much worse, because it's on a nuclear scale, so their lives would actually decrease. And secondly, they have been brainwashed into thinking that what they have now is a paradise, and it would take years before they actually realize that that is not the case. My final... You have a question?
I do.
Go for it.
Are you stating that the 250,000 people in prison camps in North Korea would not be happy to be liberated? Is that what you're saying?
250,000 people might be happy, and 20 million would start picking up their guns and shooting the foreign invaders.
20 million starving people?
My final argument is that this would make the world less safe because it would trigger another Cold War. This century is going to be marked by the relationship between China and the US. And we think that it's absolutely absurd to think that China would cooperate with the US in an invasion. China supports the North Korean regime. They are a trading partner of them. So it would either be China invading or the US invading, but not both of them. Most likely US with NATO. What this would mean is that Western forces would put troops into North Korea, a country that neighbors China. Now, China is not going to react to this nicely in any way. Already there is a lot of tension between the US and China, with aircraft carriers patrolling the Straits of Taiwan, trying to keep China from taking back that country. So what is going to happen is the entire century is going to be overshadowed by these two superpowers competing, and it's going to cause them not to be able to cooperate on other things like climate change and overpopulation.
Thank you very much, Willem. Now guys, you've been kind of silent. I haven't really heard any here, or shame, or at least not that much. So what about we just practice? Come on, I just want to hear a couple of here's. Just gonna play it really childish. Come on. Here. Once again. Here. Awesome. Now shame. Just try it with a really long and. Yep. Okay. Shame. Yep. Shame. Thank you. So now I'm going to call upon the, well, self-appointed Minister of Defense. Kind of looks like it. Mr. Tobias van Gent, could you please come forward? Give it up!
Mr. Speaker, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we have an historical mission to perform. To end the last remaining dictatorship in the world. And together with the Joint Chief of Staff, in close cooperation with the Red Army and the People's Army of the People Republic of China, indeed with China. Of course, my opponent said something about the trade relationship of North Korea and China. Like, that's more important than the trade relationship with the EU or the USA. Dream on. We have come with a cunning plan to strike North Korea down. And I promise you, read my lips, within 48 hours. Of course, this civilian who has never held an arm in his hand before, who doesn't know anything about the military, will convince you otherwise. 48 hours. Of course they have a huge and massive army, but its equipment is totally outdated. Main battle tanks from the 50s. They even have the tanks from the Second World War still in the inventory. Yes.
So Kim Jong-un's gone. Then what?
then his son taking over. But the army is still totally outdated. They have 1,500 planes, the majority are from the 50s and the 60s. But this is only the hardware. Now let's talk about the software. All intelligence reports, and indeed the Chinese are very aware what's going on, the North Korean army, indicate they have a very, very low morale. Shortage of fuel, spare parts, shortage of food. And they are a conscription army. They lack the professional arms like we have. So ladies and gentlemen, this won't be another Vietnam. Let me give me a small insight in our plan. I suppose there are no North Korean spies in the room, so I can go on with it. We will start this war with a massive cyber attack. And because the North Korean computers still run on Windows 95, they will be totally unprotected against our viruses. After that, a short, decisive air campaign, our special forces, and we have far more special forces than the North Koreans, will take over and will capture the important government buildings, infrastructure, and indeed, we have all signs indicates that the conscript army of North Korea will break out very quickly. But I can already hear the skepticism on the other side. We will win in a short lightning war, but can we also win a peace? And I assure you again, this won't be another Iraq. We have learned from our past experiences. We are now totally dedicated. After the defeat of the North Korean army and regime, we will win the hearts and the minds of the North Korean people.
Shame!
How? 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 Because we use the massive soft power of the West. We all know that Kim Jong-il was a great Hollywood fan. He was also watching Western porn movies, Elvis Presley, and pizza eating. He even declared that he invented the pizza. And we are quite convinced that just like the former leader, the North Korean people show much interest to all those fruits of capitalism. So we have made a secret cunning plan. And that's we have a new unit, the so-called mobile BK and MD units. And like you were so much into the military, have you ever heard of these special units? Yes?
My professor actually never told me about this.
As long as you haven't taken the Western way of war class, you shouldn't be talking about military stuff. Well, I will explain you. The BK and MD units are the so-called Burger King and McDonald's units. They will set up shortly after we secured an area of military assistance. They will move in and they will give away hamburgers for free. What about the other part of the plan? Free concerts. Madonna, Lady Gaga, Kiss, and don't forget Motorhead.
Yes!
Because if you did your research well, you are aware that the illegal copies of Motorhead are the most popular band in North Korea. And mobile movie theaters, showing Disney movies, Rambo sequels of course, and the latest Muppet Show. Ladies and gentlemen, after a short and decisive war, we will bomb the North Koreans with hamburger, McDonald's, Motorhead and the Muppets, and we will bomb them into submission. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bagent, for this brilliant plan of dietary intervention. I'd like to call to the front Jair van der Stelt, Deputy Leader of the Opposition. Give it up for Jair van der Stelt!
Everyone in here is completely aware that these two people here teach about war. Apparently it is inevitable for people who teach war to actually also preach it. There is a really big problem here, and the problem is not necessarily present in North Korea, it's present in the proposition. We have warmongers in here, and I will explain you how exactly this came to be. We cannot put Professor Van Gent in charge of this. Why not? He has successfully taught me in Western way of war that politicians decide on war and peace, not soldiers. Look at the uniform he's wearing, ladies and gentlemen. What is this? Is this a politician or a soldier? I have been present in Western way of war, and apparently my own professor wasn't even in his class. Now, this to me is... It gets worse, to be honest. I guess it gets even worse, right? I've heard stories. I've heard stories of freedom. I've heard stories of liberating them. I've heard stories of, you know, killing their ears with Lady Gaga and all that shit. But to be very brief about this, what we're looking at here is not a case for freedom. It is a case for the killing of freedom for these North Koreans. Why is this the case? What is sovereignty? Why are these people in charge of their own lives? Why are they self-determined? We are looking at that right now. At this point in time, we value people's self-determination within their own nation. This is called sovereignty. It's by their consent that they are ruled. At this point in time in North Korea, there is not enough oppression, there's not enough of a rebellion against Kim Jong-il, or Kim Jong-un rather, and the poor man is dead now, that will actually, you know, cause this sovereignty to be faded away. You can sit down, not interested. Sit down, please. Thank you very much. Sovereignty is not affected by propaganda or brainwashing. This is just a way of Professor van Gent, who likes to hold the gun, and we can see that again by his uniform, who likes to hold the gun and blast away at everything alive that he sees, right? We consider this to be a really big problem, to be very honest. Like, why exactly would we put these people in charge? So, yeah, okay, bring it.
How exactly people in North Korea are in charge of their own lives?
You can sit down. You can sit down. They are in charge of their own lives because within their epistemology, they are happy. They're considering what is right. They consider the veneration of their leader to be the main important thing to their happiness. Like Van Gent considers the veneration of his weapon to be the main important thing of his happiness, right? Why do we not hear criticism on this? Why do we not hear criticism on the worship of nationalism, the worship of militarism that is present at this point in time within the proposition? Charles.
Have you ever heard of just war?
You can sit down. I have heard of just war, and apparently that is not the case here. Because again, like I said, war is only just if it has the sovereignty of the people that actually opposes this military, that is actually in favor of this military intervention. We do not want to go to an age of imperialism where Professor Van Gent and Professor Giles Scott Smith are actually holding the guns and are running around shooting people in third world countries for the sake of their own greed and their own happiness, just because they enjoy killing people. We don't think this is necessarily a good thing. The problem... We here, on the side of proposition, have a few people that are obviously stuck in the 19th century. Now, I can't blame the British for this, obviously, because, you know, it was their century, they never got out of it to begin with. But we are now in the 21st century. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now in the 21st century. This is no longer an age of imperialism. Britain does not rule the world, the waves anymore, and neither, I'm sorry, very sorry, Professor Van Gent, do the Dutch. In fact, you know, we cannot no longer talk about, you know, going off to foreign countries, colonizing the shit out of them, and expect these people to just take what we're doing to them. That's no longer what we're talking about. This is an age where we have transcended this kind of particular warmongering behavior and warmongering epistemology. Ladies and gentlemen, I beg you, please vote in opposition to this motion.
Thank you very much. Professors, you also have a microphone out there. It's...
Are we accustomed to speak without a microphone?
Can you hear them in the back?
We're stuck in the 19th century.
But please, make only the British be stuck in the 19th century.
Guys, wait, can you hear me in the back?
Yeah. Perfectly.
Can somebody get us a...
Okay, awesome. Okay, next. Member of Government, Miss Barbara Oomen, could you please come to the front? Give it up for Barbara Oomen!
Mr. Speaker, we've heard about warmongers here. We've heard a lot about people here, but we've heard very little about the people in North Korea. We have heard a few things about the people in North Korea. The people in North Korea can't think for themselves, and that's fine for them. They're happy out there. The people in North Korea don't care about freedom. The people in North Korea don't mind, apparently, according to the opposition, all the extrajudicial killings. They enjoy torture. It's a cultural thing. The women don't mind being raped out there. It's fine if the babies are killed. I mean, that's the North Korean way of doing things. These are North Koreans. Well, I beg your pardon, Mr. Speaker, but if anybody is stuck in the 19th century, it does seem to me that it's the whole of the opposition. In the 19th century, we talked about sovereignty. In the 19th century, we talked about states. In the 20th century, after a terrible, terrible war to teach us all about that, we started thinking about people. And we formulated the whole idea of human rights. And on the 9th of December 1948, the day before passing the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we, as the international community, adopted a convention. And in that convention, we vowed solemnly to never let genocide happen again. And we, China, Russia, the US, and many other countries promise not to let that happen again. Please ask me your questions.
If your only plan after invasion is to hand out hamburgers, how is it going to beat the inclination these people have without greatest leader alive?
Well, in a country where 4 million people have died over the past 10 years of starvation, hamburgers or rice, I have the feeling that everything will be warm and welcome. But let me return because, Mr. Speaker, I can't help wondering how it will go. North Korea will be freed. It's the last pocket of terrorism, dictatorship. It's the worst country to live in the world. It will be freed. Those 250,000 people sitting in camps as we speak will come out. Starved to death, deprived, and they will ask us, they'll come up to us and they'll ask us and they'll say, did you not know? Did you not know what was happening to us? Did you not know that women were raped on a daily basis? Did you not know that they were impregnated and as soon as the babies were born they were killed? Did you not know about the women who were sent to China to prostitute themselves and then were sent back to North Korea and had their babies killed afterwards? And what will we say? We'll say, we knew, of course we knew. We had Google Earths, we had Google Maps, we saw the camps, we counted you, we had pieces in the newspaper, we had debates about you in Middelburg, we knew. Please.
The situation in North Korea is horrible. We understand this, we accept this. What about the millions who will die in a nuclear war if there is a military intervention? What about their rights?
Well, we've just heard this targeted Windows, Microsoft, hamburger B-key and B-plan by General van Gent. And I have the idea that it won't be millions of people. Please sit down. I do want to talk about the people for a moment because we are forgetting them these days. Because they will ask, did you not know? And we will say, well, yes, we knew. We have reports. We talked about you in the Security Council. We talked about you in Middelburg. And then they will ask, well, did you not feel like you had to do something? Did you not have to do something? And then we will say, well, actually, we had this convention. We did pass a convention in 1948, and we defined genocide. And we said the worst of crimes, the crime of crimes, is targeting a whole population group. And they'll say, aha, so we probably didn't fit that definition. You probably didn't have to do anything. And we will have to say, well, actually, the fact that whole population groups were killed, the infanticide, the way in which especially Chinese, Korean children were killed, that fitted the definition of genocide. We knew, we talked about it in the Security Council. And we decided to act. That's what we'll have to say. North Korea, dear Speaker, members of the opposition, is a place where genocide takes place under our eyes. We know, we see, we dare. We have all the information. We have books, we have prison guards testifying how they torture people on a daily basis. We've seen the 4 million people killed. We know it's this criminal government that's responsible for doing that. We know all that. We speak in our newspapers about Auschwitz Revisited. We have a legal obligation. It's not a moral obligation, it's a legal obligation to intervene in a case of genocide. And that's exactly what we should do here. A question?
We still haven't heard the answer to our last question. How many hamburgers, shitty pop albums, and iPods are you going to stack up to prevent nuclear warfare from happening?
There's this targeted plan with the whole, remember we are the whole UN Security Council. We have China, we have Russia, we have America, and I can't see how the opposition can be so naive, or maybe it's just easy for them, can be so naive as to think that with our intelligence, our countries together, we can't target the nuclear plants in such a way, we can't invade them in such a way via the combination of the Windows targeted approach with the general bombing approach, that this nuclear power, which, to be honest, I mean, have we ever seen that? We've seen the people starving, but we haven't seen that much of the nuclear power. But the nuclear power is there, that won't be the problem. The real problem is our conscience. And the question, what we will say that day when the people starving in North Korea will come to us and say, how can it be that you knew and you did nothing at all? That's a question to ponder upon, dear Speaker.
Thank you very much. I'm really curious if we're going to be stuck in the 19th century after the next speech. There is one thing though. In the back, they really don't hear you without a microphone. The sound engineer just came up to me and said, hey man, come on. We really don't hear a show when people are talking through it. So that's the thing. So now I'd like to call to the front the member of opposition, Remco Zwetsloot. Give it up for Remco! Give it up, guys!
Alright. Now, we finally heard a sane case from the proposition, which I welcome and which I compliment you for. And as my rude two colleagues have not done it yet, I would like to thank our professors, who seem to have morphed into this communal form of George W. Bush reincarnated over here, for stepping up and debating a force that is so clearly intellectually superior to them. It takes real guts, and I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say that I respect you for it. Alright, then on to my case. Alright? They say we must think of our conscience. The people will be freed. We want to do nothing. This is all bullshit, alright? We have not said that we will do nothing. We just think of the consequences of our actions and rationally consider what will actually happen when a plan is implemented. Alright? This debate tonight is not about intentions. We all want the same thing for North Korea, which is happiness and peace and freedom. And that must come. But we must think of what we're saying. We must think of the consequences of the plans that we propose. Their plan will cause nothing